Bottom of the hour, we're going to talk to a writer for the Washington Examiner who wrote about a proposed meeting over critical race theory by a school district in California. Then when this article came out, all of a sudden, they canceled the meeting about critical race theory. By the way, whenever you want to join the show, leave a message, have a criticism, constructive or otherwise, make sure your comment is less than 59 seconds, and you can call 888-971-7243, 888-971-7243. We're going to also be talking about more deep thoughts from Kamala Harris and the power of the NRA lobby, the supposed power of the NRA lobby, and this assertion that nowhere else in the world is there a country where there are mass shootings as there are here in the United States. And more thoughts about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. But first, we have to begin the show on yet another sad note, another mass shooting, this one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where 5 people, including the shooter, were killed.
Alejandro, we did learn a lot during this press conference that lasted almost an hour. We have learned that 2 of the 4 victims were physicians here at St. Francis. One victim was a receptionist. The other was a patient here at the doctor's office when that suspect stormed the second floor, opening fire, again, killing those 4 victims. Now, again, we did hear from the Tulsa police chief just a short time ago, laying a pretty good timeline of the events that took place leading up to the shooting that happened yesterday. We're told that the suspect, who has been identified as Michael Lewis, was a patient of Dr. Preston Phillips. Now, we're told that he was seen for a back surgery back in May. Well, after being released, Lewis had complained and contacted the doctor's office several times over the coming weeks about needing additional help for that back surgery. We're told that on May 29th, Lewis bought a semi-automatic gun at a pawn show legally. He also bought an AR-15 style rifle at about 2 p.m. from a Tulsa area gun store yesterday, the day of the shooting. Now, police say officers found a letter on Lewis yesterday, making it very clear of his intent and motive. They say he wanted to kill Dr. Phillips and anyone who got in his way. He blamed Dr. Phillips for causing the pain following that back surgery.
So you heard his motive. His motive is he was unhappy with what he perceived to be an adverse reaction to his back surgery. By the way, notice that piece did not identify the assailant. The assailant, it turns out, was a black man, as was this black man's doctor. I only mention that because after Buffalo, as you know, Joe Biden said, I thought we had our hands around white supremacy. And then Buffalo took place. And as I've said many, many times before, when you look at the percentage of white people in America versus the percentage of white mass shooters, whites are underrepresented when it comes to mass shooters, mass killers. And when you look at the percentages of Asians in America and blacks in America, blacks and Asians are overrepresented when it comes to mass shootings. So please, whenever it's a white guy, it's all this talk about white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy. And when Ahmaud Arbery, the man in Georgia, was shot while jogging, LeBron James said, black people are afraid to leave their homes, referring to being afraid to leave their homes because of all these white people roaming the streets looking to kill them, the way the 2 MAGA people were roaming the streets of Chicago at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for a gay guy to beat up. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Obviously, these shootings are of concern. Obviously, we try to minimize them if possible, get it down to 0 if possible. But to act as if there's some sort of peril of white nationalists and white people stalking down black people is absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Now, the issue of hardening the target, as I mentioned before. I've talked about this with John Lott of the Crime Research Prevention Center, and we talked about hardening the targets. You look at Israel, where teachers and staffers are armed, you do not have this kind of thing. And it turns out polls favor arming teachers. Poll put out by the Trafalgar Group found that majority of Americans, 57.5%, believe schools are somewhat or more dangerous without teachers who carry a legal firearm and are properly trained to use it. Now listen to this. 7 67.5% of these voters are Republicans, and 48.2% are Democrats. So a greater plurality of Democrats support arming teachers than don't, but far more Republicans do than do Democrats. Now, why would this break down ideological lines? One would think either it makes sense for teachers and staffers to arm themselves, or it doesn't, and it would make sense or not make sense whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican. Why is it this would break down along ideological lines, as are so many of our issues in America? And I'll tell you why. Because Democrats fundamentally believe that many Americans are frankly too irresponsible to exercise their freedom. And that's why they support large government. And when government becomes a parent, the children become the teacher. When government becomes a parent, the people become the children. And for many, many Democrats, the people are children. Way, way, way too irresponsible to deal with freedom. Republicans don't feel that way. And it's interesting because when it comes to things like abortion, what does the left say? Republicans are trying to, quote, tell women what to do with their bodies. Never mind the polls showing a greater percentage of women are pro-life than men. But the idea is that Republicans want to tell you what to do. And here we are having another poll where Republicans believe that you know what to do. You're responsible enough what to do, and that other people ought not be telling you whether or not you should be armed. But it's the Republicans who are pushing people around, telling them what to do. Now, getting back to Uvalde, out of all the comments I've heard, rarely have I heard anybody at all talk about the possible effect of COVID on the mentality of these young shooters. The 18-year-old in Buffalo, the 18-year-old in Uvalde. And according to the Uvalde shooter's father, the shooter, whose name was Salvador Ramos, was reportedly frustrated with the COVID precautions. And during the shutdown, there was a new report called Projected Deaths of Despair During Coronavirus Recession. And it said as many as 75,000 Americans could die from despair. And this is from unemployment, depression from isolation, fear of the indefinite and uncertain nature of the pandemic. And we find that during the shutdowns, suicides went up, homicides went up, depression went up, domestic violence went up. We suspect child abuse went up. I say suspect because the number one way of reporting on child abuse is for children to go to school and then people to observe injuries. Well, kids weren't going to school, so these injuries were not being observed. But why would those other things go up and not child abuse go up? So when talking about the effects of the lockdowns and the number of lives that are saved, we have to put that into context and talk about the number of lives that are lost through things like depression. Now, there's no evidence that any of these shooters were depressed regarding COVID. But again, the shooter's father in Uvalde did say that he was bothered by the coronavirus shutdowns and lockdowns. So we talk about mental health, and we're talking a lot about mental health now. How many people in this country are suicidal, homicidal, depressed, going on drugs as a result of the coronavirus lockdown? We come back. Joy Behar says that there are mentally ill people everywhere. Why is it only in America that these kinds of shootings happen? Except it's not true that it only happens in America. I'll be right back. That towering of intellect, Joy Behar of The View, says, there are mentally ill people everywhere, but why only in America does this happen?
Sarah, we both know and everybody knows that mentally ill people are everywhere in the world. This is the only country where they shoot people.
Right, well, but I'm saying if we can... And
this is the only country, you know, of the couple of years ago, of the top 20 mass killings in the world, the majority of them took place outside the US, either in Europe, South Asia, or Africa. Pakistan, 2014, Peshawar school massacre. 141 people shot to death, mostly children. November 2015, Paris, over 2 days. Assailants shot and used explosives that killed 130 people, wounded 494 others. Kenya, 2015, 148 people killed. Norway, 2011, 77 people killed. Westgate Shopping Mall, Nairobi, Kenya, 67 people killed. South Korea shooting, 56 people killed, 1982. New Zealand mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, 51 people killed. At a beach, Tunisia, 38 people killed. Port Arthur, Australia, 35 people killed. Beijing, China, 1994, 28 people killed. At a wedding in Kampala, Uganda, 26 people killed. Nova Scotia, Canada, 2020, 22 people killed. So of the top 20, 12 of them took place outside of the United States. So it is not true that this is the only place where this happens. Joy Reid, the bigoted woman on MSNBC, the one who had a blog circa 2007, 2008, making all sorts of homophobic comments, saying that she hated the sight of watching two men kissing, made a comment about Brokeback Mountain, suggested that Ann Coulter was gay, suggested other celebrities were gay without any evidence whatsoever, made some hideous homophobic comments. And after she got her gig on MSNBC, of course, those homophobic comments surfaced from that blog, and she denied posting them. NBC hired a forensic expert to find out whether or not she had been hacked. She claimed she'd been hacked. They found no evidence she'd been hacked. So she apologized. She said, I don't know why I put those things. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. More surfaced. She denied again that she did them and had to again admit that she had done them. Now, anybody else, it would have killed them. But here she is on MSNBC weighing in about racist Republicans, sexist Republicans, having said some hideous things that had, I don't know, Donald Trump said them, he wouldn't be able to come out in the daytime. Here's what she said about the gun industry.
Extreme way of capitalizing on a wholly manufactured sense of apocalyptic fear, deliberately created by people who have a financial and political motive to keep a certain segment of the population, namely white working class Christians, in a constant state of panic.
Have a need to keep white working class Christians in a constant state of panic? Does she know where the homicides take place? In the inner city. Chicago, on track to set records. Haven't seen this kind of carnage since 1996. Chicago's a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic, roughly. Between 80% of the homicides in Chicago, black on black. And get this, some 75% of them are unsolved. I'm in Los Angeles. Last 2 years, shootings, homicides up over 40%. The predominant victims, black people. And as we've said many times, out of all the homicides in this country, Half of the homicide victims are Black, almost all killed by other Blacks. Now, whenever I say that, I get somebody to say, well, white people, when they're killed by white people as well, which is true. But whites are 63% of the population, but account for a much smaller percentage of the murders than their population. Blacks are just 13% of the population, but half of the homicides are Black. And again, almost always killed by other Black people. But you let some white Christian male Republican do something, oh my God, they're out to get us. The Klan has risen again. It is absolutely ridiculous.
The gun industry, aided by the right-wing media ecosphere, creates this.
The gun industry, aided by the right-wing media ecosphere. What the hell does that even mean? Is that like an alien from outer space? Is that a zombie who came out of quicksand? The ecosphere, right-wing ecosphere? Hide the women and children. Now, her implication is, and you hear this all the time, is the power of the gun lobby, the power of the gun lobby. Presumably meaning that the gun lobby gives Republicans money, and therefore Republicans are refusing to do anything at all that would be inconsistent with the interests, the needs, the desires of the NRA, the gun lobby. I got a question. If all you have to do is write a politician a check, and that politician will do whatever you want him or her to do, why in the world, if I'm the NRA, would I spend a dime on Republicans? They're already in my corner. They're already staunch believers of the Second Amendment and believe that when you restrict the Second Amendment, all you're doing is restricting the access of guns to law-abiding people, making it easier and easier for bad guys to prey upon them. Why wouldn't I simply give my money to Democrats? Wouldn't that make much more sense? Because people like Joy Reid are implying that politicians are simply bought and paid for. So therefore, all you have to do is whip out the checkbook and they will do what you want. Now, do you know how much money the NRA spent on lobbying last year? $4 million. Now, that may sound like a lot of money, absolutely. But considering this, the pharmaceutical and health products industry spent $356 million last year lobbying. The insurance industry, $152 million lobbying last year. The electronics manufacturing equipment industry, $179 million last year. Electric utilities, including green energy, $112 million last year. So are the Democrats beholden to the green lobbying industry? Are they in the pocket of the green industry people? There was a study done by the Cato Institute, the libertarian think tank, and they looked at why politicians voted the way they did. Primary reason, they voted consistent with their own ideological beliefs. Second, they voted in a way they thought their voters wanted them to vote in a way. And third, they voted in the way they thought their party wanted them to vote. So if it's just a matter of writing people a check and they will do what you want, memo to the NRA, don't write checks to Republicans. Write checks to people like Nancy Pelosi. Write checks to people like Chuck Schumer. Write checks to people like the Squad. Write checks to people like Bernie Sanders. They have far more power, far more ability, visibility than many of the other people on the left. All you have to do is pay them off and they will do what you tell them. Now, we come back. The new press secretary referred to Vice President Kamala Harris as the First Lady. So stick around for that. But first, switch over to Epoch Times TV, EPOCH, Epoch Times TV, to finish watching the show. And at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking to a gentleman who wrote an article critical of a proposed meeting of a California school district about critical race theory. And after his article came out, they canceled the meeting. We'll be right back. People have been asking me, what have you been doing with your life since the election? Well, the truth is I've been enjoying life, riding my bike around town.
Oh, they're not wearing a mask.
I've taken up a little bit of fishing as well.
Elder kills innocent fish.
And I've been posting on social media. Oh, come on. Listen, if you're tired of the censorship as I am, I've actually got some great news for you. Check out EpochTV.com. It's a brand new censorship-free video platform where you'll find not only my show, but other deep documentaries, great content, and honest movies that bring you the news without all the spin and the false narratives.